All right. So we are, I think, live on Facebook now as well as on Zoom. Can you sneak in there too? Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Cole.
I'm Elizabeth Stevens.
And thanks for joining us this morning for Making Taxes Mindful. So we're using some new technology today. So if there are some gaps, just bear with us. But we're doing our best. And if we're doing this right, there'll be the webinar, which is being hosted on Zoom. And then we'll also be on Facebook Live. So what we're going to do is just get right on into the presentation. And I'm just going to pull up the slideshow, and then I'm going to screen share with all of you. Just give me one moment there. Okay. Let's go to screen share. And then we can do that. Perfect. Okay, let's just, I hope that you are seeing this slideshow. Let me just double check that it is the case. Yes, that looks good. It looks like that people are seeing our screen. Okay, perfect. So we will get started. Okay, great. So as we mentioned, and as you probably know if you're here, this presentation is called Making Taxes Mindful. It is a brand new creation by Elizabeth and myself. The idea here, as you see in the tagline, is to demystify taxes and also our limiting mindsets around money and taxes. Before we talk about the kind of roadmap for today, I just wanted to share why we are doing this. So late last week, I was talking to a couple of really incredible entrepreneur friends of mine, and in two separate conversations, they each shared, you can just kind of sense the fear and apprehension and nervousness and about taxes. And in general, it's a scary topic, right? But especially for entrepreneurs, and we'll talk a bit more about that. And I realized there was a huge need for this. And so I wanted to put this presentation together, but do it within the work that I do, which, really places our relationship with money in the context of society and our identities and different structures that are in place. And so then it was a really easy choice to bring in Elizabeth because she shares those perspectives as well. We may not agree on everything, but we bring that same kind of mindset to these conversations. So that's really what brought us here today. And just briefly, the outline is, so the introduction, which is what we're doing now, and you'll learn a little bit more about me and about Elizabeth in a moment. And then the first section is mindfulness, money, and taxes. And the second section is business taxes, the why and how. And then we'll have a question and answer period, so you can ask any questions live if you may have them. And then we'll just wrap it up. Okay, so first I'll talk a little bit about me. I've been generally working in this area for over a decade now. My journey really started in financial services at a place called Northwestern Mutual. And that's where I got my first exposure to working with families on their finances. And it was really empowering for me and for them to learn to shore up the gaps and just get more grounded and on the same page. I ended up going to law school. So I went to Duke for law school and NYU, where I got a master's in tax law in particular. So that's another big part of why I care about this topic and I'm doing this presentation. I'm a certified mediator as well, a certified mediator, which I bring to my practice, in particular working with couples to help them resolve financial conflicts and achieve greater love and intimacy through working through that. I'm a big animal advocate, been vegan for over 5 years and done all different kinds of advocacy. And I'm also a lifelong musician, so I've been playing piano since I'm 4, played the tuba and trombone as well. And more recently, I just joined a cover band in the San Francisco Bay Area. So if you're around, look out for us. We've got we're called Casual Encounters, because if you get the illusion, we all met on Craigslist. So that's a little bit about me, and I will hand it over to Elizabeth now.
I have a background in actually Eastern philosophy. That was my undergraduate degree. Wound up getting a master's in accounting. Worked at big accounting firms in tax, did tax returns for high net worth individuals and corporations in Silicon Valley. Learned a lot from that. I have 2 kids. And spent most of my career in venture capital finance, actually, and now I'm working on a PhD in transpersonal psychology. So hoping to kind of integrate finance and emotions. I'm also part of the Transformative Technology Lab and the Finder's course. So
what are those?
Oh, well,
You going to talk about it later?
Yeah, later.
Okay, perfect. Great. Because I actually don't know quite yet. Okay, great. So we'll just dive on in. Thanks for being a lot more concise than I was. So, here's the first thing we want to talk about. Other folks may, you may have been to other finance presentations, and sometimes we, as finance people, have a kind of habit of talking down at people. But my hope is that we bring more understanding to this conversation today. And the reality is that taxes are indeed scary, right? They're really complicated. You want to show them the book you brought?
Oh, yes. My 2019 Master Tax Guide.
Yes.
Is, yeah.
And
terrifying.
Yeah, and there's a whole lot more. I mean, there's not all the court cases on tax laws that, it can get extremely complicated, right? However, there's some good news, right? Which is that it's kind of one of those 80-20 situations where 20% of the understanding can get you 80% of the way there. And that's part of our goal today. But yeah, taxes in general are complicated. And for businesses, it's even scarier, right? Even more complicated. Wait, I don't know what to do. And am I a corporation? Am I a sole proprietorship? What even are those things? Maybe you're a business owner listening and you're like, I don't even know those terms. And that's all okay, right? And we will demystify that for you, right? But I want you to know that we get where y'all are coming from. If this is your experience, I mean, I went to school for a lot of years to study tax, and there's plenty of things that I don't know myself. The other thing is, and this is common for a lot of us in our life in general, is we don't want to mess it up, right? Especially if it's our business, especially if it's our passion. We want to do it right. We don't want to mess up. We don't want the government on us. It's like there's just so much anxiety that working on your taxes, or the idea of working on your taxes, can create, right? So I want to make sure that you all know, everybody out there watching this, you are not alone. And I mean that in a multitude of ways. Number one is that you're not alone because there are truly millions and millions of Americans, and probably people around the world, who are struggling with dealing with their taxes. I like to ask CPAs who I meet what percentage of people understand something based what I call our kind of marginal progressive tax rate on income. And the range I usually get is like 10 to 25%. So 1/10 to 1/4 of people, right? When it's happening at such a systemic level that people don't understand these things, it's not the fault of the individual. There's something bigger going on, right? And while we also agitate for change to that bigger thing to address it, we're also interested in how we can empower ourselves and empower people like you watching and listening in your life in these moments, right? Because life matters to you right now. Your business matters to you right now. There's a change you're out to make today, tomorrow, this year, not some magical date in the future in 300 years when, Americans actually understand our tax code, right? The other way in which you're not alone is that there are people out there who can support this and do it in a compassionate way. This is the work that it's not only what Elizabeth and I are doing, but we are two of the people bringing this conversation. There are a lot of others out there as well. The triumvirate of tax terror. I called it this because I like consonants, but also this came out of a recent workshop I did called Make Peace with Your Finances. And, a lot of gratitude to the participants because they really helped me see this and contextualize it. And, if you're watching, feel free to raise your hand if this applies to you, but I see this all over the place, that there's a lot of shame for people around their lack of knowledge around finances, and perhaps taxes even more so. And then there's often a lot of avoidance, like I don't want anything to do with the topic, right? People either avoid it altogether, they don't file their taxes, or maybe they're just like, here, CPA, deal with it for me, right? But they don't want to have any concern with it. And then relatedly, there's a lack of knowledge, right? And I think if you just like reflect on your own life, or imagine, think about how these things interplay. We feel ashamed that we don't make a lot of money, or we don't know enough about money, or whatever it is. So we avoid the topic altogether. And then in avoiding it, then we never learn, right? And then because we don't have that knowledge, then we feel more shame and we avoid it even more, and so on and so forth. And these things can really just keep you going in this kind of interminable vortex. But what we're here to do today is to stop that flow. Right? Stop that flow through mindfulness, and stop that flow through knowledge in a compassionate and thoughtful way to get you on the path forward. So Hope you'll grant me the indulgence to quote myself in my presentation, but this is something I shared on social media recently. Said, your money mindset may not be your fault, but it is your responsibility. What I mean by this is like what I was saying before, we have a systemic issue that they don't understand the tax code. They don't understand how it applies to them. We all have all this baggage around money, right? There's particular other nuances depending on who you are and your background, right? I mean, money is a concept around math, and there's a lot of people, in particular women, who are kind of sent messages at it from a young age that has many of them believe and take on that they're not good at math, and that translates to finance. And then, we end up in just kind of all these yucky situations. And so it's not your fault. And I want to say that clearly. It's not your fault that you are where you are. It's not an accident. It happened as a result of all the experiences you've had, right? And at the same time, here as an adult, as a business owner, whatever the case is for you, it is your responsibility, right? When we unearth this conversation, there may be a part that just wants to continue to blame the system, and the system deserves a lot of blame. But the question is, how can you empower yourself, right? And the way to do that is by making it your responsibility to understand and tackle these topics in a way that's going to help you thrive for what you care about and what you're up to in your life. This is just a fun quote. This is from a Supreme Court case, Gregory versus Helvering, I forget exactly when, late 1800s, early 1900s. And yes, there was a judge whose name was Learned Hand. Don't ask me how or why, but that was his actual name. And one from his series of an epic quotes is that he said, there is not even a patriotic duty to increase one's taxes, right? And if you're out there, corporations are doing everything they can, hiring people like Elizabeth and myself or at least in our past lines of work, hiring people like us to make sure that they are paying the least they can, right? And it's a complicated topic, but they're at least within their legal rights there typically, right? We have the opportunity to do the same thing. And so, what you choose to do is up to you. But where I always want people to be is from a place of understanding and mindfulness, and then they can choose what direction they want to go after that, right? So we're going to help empower you to fulfill on Justice Learned Hand's proclamation. And so we're going to do something a little bit more like an activity here. We're going to talk about your tax and money story. And, this is something I always do in my workshops, but I want to bring the specific tax angle here. And so take a moment to reflect. If you're near a pad and pen, like a pen and paper, or maybe even open up a Word or Google Doc and jot some thoughts. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this right now just because of the length of the webinar. But in order for us to create space for shifting perspectives and mindsets, for transforming things, we have to get at the root of what's already there. And what's already there around money and taxes is a whole lot of stuff, right? So here's some places to look. And this is by no means an exhaustive list. However, it's going to get you started. I want you to think about, how did your parents handle money? What about in your family? How was this topic treated? What about taxes in particular? Was it something your parents ever talked about? Did they talk to you about it? How did they view taxes? Whether it was their own taxes or corporations paying taxes or what the government did with their tax money, just start to dig into what were the mindsets you've acquired. Okay, another really key place to look here for the entrepreneurs in the audience or people with side hustles is other business owners. I think many of us know a business owner who's like, oh yeah, I just deducted that whole trip to Europe because I have a business and I was able to deduct the whole thing. And they say it kind of proudly, and something's a little funky about it, but you're just like, oh, and then maybe you think that's really cool. I want to be a business owner and learn taxes and how to kind of take advantage of the system. Or maybe you're like, hey, that person's kind of slimy, and you start to associate the taxes as something that slimy people avoid or whatever. There may be a whole host of things that can come up, right? Another topic that's important around money and then tax, because it's a subset of that, look at your culture, your religion, your race, gender, and sexuality. Society has all kinds of things to say, and the people within it and the institutions and media about someone who looks this sort of way and who has these sort of attributes. If you're a man, you're this way. If you're a woman, you're that way. If you're white, you're that way. If you're Latino, you're this way. If you're Black, you're that way, right? About all these different kinds of things, right? And it's not that society is correct, right? In fact, these are typically based on stereotypes, and they're often very harmful. However, what I'm suggesting here is that the path to being able to shift this and transform it is for you to dive in and understand your relationships to some of these stereotypes, norms, expectations, right? And even if you've rejected them, you know, there's still something to discover in there. For example, so as a man, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't agree with these norms that say that the man has to be the breadwinner, and you know, of course, there's so much in here like, oh, and he should be with a woman, and the woman should be taking care of the home, and I like agree with like none of those. I mean, of course, but you can structure your relationship however you want, right? But I agree with none of those as like the way it ought to be or anything like that. However, in being conscious about constructing my relationships and my relationship with money and career and earnings and taking care of a home or a family, for me to be at a deeper conscious level, I want to explore those narratives that I've been fed and internalized, because even in reacting to them, that is still like engaged with them, right? Even if I reject them. And, you know, I want you to get curious about what are the norms you may have taken on as true, or the stereotypes, what are the ones you may have rejected? And then if you were able to see that for what it is, you know, what would you choose in a world where the norm has no influence, right? Where that stereotype has no influence. So there's a lot there, right? But I just want you to start thinking about that and maybe jot notes as you like. But here's the good news, okay? And I think you may have started to see this as we went through this conversation, is that because this came from society and you weren't necessarily born with this, all of this, right? It came from family, parents, culture, other business owners, etc. Because it's your interpretation of those things, that because you made it up, right? That also means it's malleable. Okay, you can actually shift your relationship to money. And I've been experiencing this personally as I've dug into my own history and the ways that I learned that being responsible is really important, which is great. But then I also learned that I'm bad if I spend recklessly, and recklessly was anything that wasn't really clearly tied to improving my financial situation. And, you know, I started to see ways that it kind of held me back, right? And I've been exploring, and I actually just agreed to go on an impromptu trip to Southern California, go to Disney and Universal this weekend. And that was a big deal for me, right? And I don't think I would have been able to do that until I started doing this work of digging into my own money story and my own tax story. So I'm just gonna take a moment, and if you have thoughts you want to write down from that, or anything that you may want to share in the chat, please feel free to do so. As questions come up, also feel free to put those in there, and we will definitely get to them as we go on. Okay, so we'll just give you a few moments here.
I'll just add that simply being aware of your history with money, family, values, impressions, biases, just the awareness of it is often enough to create a real transformation.
Indeed. And, you know, as you're doing this work now or after the call or whatever, you may see things right away. And it may also take some time, but it will happen. And it's really profound. And I just, before, maybe after this, we'll just check the chat and see if there's any things coming up there. But I'll leave you with this thought, and then hand it over to Elizabeth. But, you know, especially for those of you who are entrepreneurs who are watching this, but regardless of your role, right? If you're going to fulfill on the purpose that you have in your life and your business, you have to be able to thrive. And whether we like it or not, right? Even if we're agitating to, you know, overthrow capitalism, in the moment, it exists, right? It's there. And it's the agreements that we have as a society. And so whether you're in the nonprofit space or the grassroots space or the for-profit space, any of those, right? Being able to strengthen your mastery and master conversations around finance, both internally in your own emotional and cognitive and relationship to it, and then externally, your relationship to other people around money and the actual concrete facts of your finances in any given moment, right? You need to really be able to master those in order to thrive. And that's really what our goal is here today. And frankly, of all the work that we do, is to help move you along that path. So with that, we're going to get you empowered around this. And Elizabeth's going to talk some more about specific concepts and ideas around tax that can empower you. And before we do so, just going to take a quick check here on the chat and see if there's anything happening there. Okay, do I have to stop sharing to do that? Okay, great. Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, so we will go back to the screen share. That's how we do that. Okay, great. And let me get that queued back up. And get this squared away again. All right, great. All you.
Okay, well, let's dive right in. This is the knowledge piece of that cycle Adam talked about, the triumvirate of tax terror. It really is a thing. If you have a few basic pieces of information about taxes, it's not so scary. And I'm going to try to discuss some of the reasoning behind it. And the tax code is, I mean, as we went out, it's lengthy and messy, but there is a certain logic behind it. A lot of this was developed in a bipartisan fashion. Even recent rulings like Sarbanes-Oxley was bipartisan. So there has been some attempt at logic and reason. So let's, that's great.
That.
Yeah,
okay.
No, that's great. Yeah, go ahead. So one basic concept is like your personal taxes, which you've dealt with before. You get your W-2 in the mail. You file your personal taxes, and your income is just your income as a individual. But if you're dealing with a business, your business income is minus expenses. So as an individual or entrepreneur, if you're starting a business, you are allowed to deduct your expenses. And we can talk about the politics and the complication of big corporations deducting their expenses and growing the business ad infinitum to avoid taxes. That's usually 90% of how they avoid taxes is by expensing everything and growing. But as an individual, if you're starting a business, you are allowed to deduct the reasonable expenses that are incurred in running your business.
Right. Okay.
So some basic information. So your business income, money received from the sale of your products or services, minus any returns or refunds. So we can get into the details of what is considered business income, but it's basically anything that enriches your business. In any income coming in, it can be cash, it can be, it even includes things like bartering. So this is money, wealth that's flowing in. Business expenses are anything that's flowing out that you need in order to run your business. So I'll go over a few details of business expenses in the next slides. Here are some examples, business expenses that you can deduct.
Maybe speak up a little bit.
Sure, yeah. Office rent, utilities, supplies, repairs, equipment needed to run your business, things like advertising, insurance, interest that you pay on money that you borrow, products that you purchase to sell, or products that you purchase to assist your business, the inventory, the shipping, the storage, production, and then any services that you employ. So legal services, accounting services, consulting services. If you're an entrepreneur and you utilize coaching to build your business, that's deductible. Education, continuing education. Those are also things that you expend for in order to build your business.
Yeah, it's great. And, there are a lot of these. And again, as you said on the last slide, keeping focus, in general, it's all expenses that are related to the running of your business, right? So, don't get overwhelmed by the number of different things. But I think, the key point here is it's all of those expenses. And to the extent, if you're missing any of these, then you may be leaving opportunities on the table to save some money for yourself and your business.
This slide is about some more tricky business expenses. So meals, this also includes entertainment incurred for your business. Only 50% of those are deductible. The reasoning behind this is that you got to eat anyway. So, and I've worked in situations where, big corporations spend a lot of money on very high-end meals. That's, we can discuss the ethics of such practices, but if you're taking a client out for a business lunch, you can deduct that 50% anyway. Business travel, this is kind of an interesting deduction as well, because it's an important expenditure times if you're going to conferences, if you're meeting with clients. But we all hear of cases, friends, acquaintances who say, well, I'm spending the summer in Europe. I've only got a week's worth of business, but can I deduct the whole summer? No. If you think about the overall philosophy of taxes, if the money that you're spending to build your business is the part that's deductible. So, and I think when people try to overstretch or over expense things, that's where they get into stress or anxiety, because they could get in trouble. If you have massive expenses that you're deducting that aren't really related to your business, then, this can, part of us might feel like we're, justified or we're getting away with it. But the IRS, while they're really not bad people, I've dealt a lot with the IRS and they're pretty reasonable. They are sticklers for the laws and the rules. And so you have to be able to justify reasonably everything that you're doing.
Yeah.
So, audits are not very common these days, but you need to feel comfortable and confident in the expenses that you're taking. So if you're only spending a week out of that summer on business, you deduct that 1 week's worth. You take the fraction, and then you're covered, then you're safe. So this can help reduce your anxiety, but do also expense the things that are reasonable.
Yeah.
It's hitting that balance. Labor is the third category. Labor paid to others.
You know what?
Yeah.
On the business travel point, right? And more generally, it's kind of like what I was saying before. I think people can get caught up in doing it perfectly. Mm-hmm. And, I use a CPA to file my business taxes. And we went back and forth about a couple of expenses about whether they were deductible and how much. And because there is the law, but there is sometimes room for interpretation, right, in the law. Right. And so, it's like, oh, well, I logged on and spent an hour answering emails that day. Does that count as enough for business? And, without getting into any specifics, there's sometimes gray areas, right? Mm-hmm. But without getting overwhelmed about I have to do it perfect, right? Because you don't have to do it perfect. But if you are doing things, as Elizabeth's been saying, you want to be within reason, right? Be reasonable about this. And that will get you a lot of the way in making sure you're getting most of what you can and also keeping yourself out of trouble. Relatedly, I just wanted to say generally, we didn't have a slide for this, but just a disclaimer, obviously, we want you to know everything we're doing here is for informational purposes only. It's general thoughts about taxes. Nothing here should be construed as explicit advice or for you in your particular situation. You definitely want to consult a legal or tax professional or other type of coach or consultant if you're going to take specific actions with regards to your business. However, we do hope that this information is valuable to you and you can think about how it specifically applies to your situation, or it'll give you new information moving forward, or, things you're going to want to go and learn and research yourself so that you can be empowered in your life and in your business.
So yeah, the disclaimer, these legal disclaimers you often hear, and they're not meant to frighten or scare you in any way. It's just, this is general information, general discussion. So
for sure.
Yeah. And I've been through several corporate audits, and all these situations, it's the fear that kind of gets in the way, that holds us back. And, if we have good reasons, if we're, just kind of being forthright with everything that we're doing, if we make honest mistakes, it's okay. So, if we're like willfully committing, massive fraud, if we're hiding, that's
yeah,
it's going to be harder, but if, most people, I think, get into a lot of fear. They're just trying to figure things out, and the IRS knows this. So there is a lot of leeway, and so just to kind of diffuse that fear element.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Yeah.
So the last major expense I'll talk about is labor. And so this is where, businesses get a little more complicated. If you're a sole proprietor, and we'll discuss that in the next couple of slides, if it's just you running a business, you can't deduct the wages that you pay to yourself. But once you start hiring other people as your business grows, then you can start to think about maybe incorporating or more complicated tax stuff, and then you can hire an accountant. But most of the people watching this are probably going to be sole proprietors. So let's
right. Yeah. But of course, when you have employees, then that is another cost of doing business. And so another potential deductible expense. Okay, great.
So are you a sole proprietor? This is if you're just running a business by yourself. And you'll know if you've incorporated your business as an LLC, as a partnership, as a corporation, then you've delved into tax matters before because you've had to file tax status. So like I said, most of the people watching this are going to be sole proprietors, and your business is not a separate entity from yourself. So this is kind of a tax concept. It's a little strange. A corporation or a partnership is actually a separate entity, like it has a life of its own. It continues past the lifespan of any particular individual that works for it or runs it. So in corporations, there's some different thinking. The basic philosophy around income and expenses is the same, but most people starting out, your business is still an extension of you. So it's a part of your personal tax return, and there's no separation. So if you get to, if your business really grows, if you, like I said, if you're hiring employees, that gets a little more complicated. You need to start withholding their taxes, disability insurance, other state requirements, FICA, FUTA, SUTA, all those things that you've probably seen in your W-2s. You're like, what is this? That's where it gets more complicated. But if you're just running your own business, if you use a basic tax software like TurboTax or other things, that can handle your income, your expenses pretty easily.
Yeah. And, one thing I want to say that's just, I'll only speak about it briefly because, we're trying to be mindful and, let us know in the chat if this information is kind of getting overwhelming or not, or if it's just, at the right pace. But the different, as we call them, corporate forms or entities, a partnership, an LLC, a corporation, they have different facets to them, which depending on your situation can be a strength or a weakness. One of the ideas of an LLC or a limited liability company is that right there in the title, limited liability. So in the case that there was some sort of legal action against you and your business, you get this kind of layer of protection because Elizabeth was saying it's a separate entity. So that's just something to think about. Is there the potential to get sued in your business? If there is, would it be of value to you to be able to kind of segregate your assets so that they can't come after your personal assets, right? And, you know, again, this may be right at one stage of your business, not at another. Those are very particular questions that you'll want to research yourself, maybe speak to an accountant or a tax professional about, but it's just something to consider. Are you done with the slide? Okay, great.
Okay, and this piece is, it may seem really simple, and you know, like Adam said, we don't want to like talk down, but you know, how to ace your taxes or any financial information. I mean, if you just keep records, that's really 90% of it. So I'm just going to go over a few basic things. If you keep records of all the money coming in, going out for your business, that's, I mean, your accountant will love you. Your annual, you know, TurboTax won't be so stressful. Everything, it just gets a lot easier. It seems it's overly simple, but it's something that kind of trips people up.
Yeah,
so.
And in doing this kind of work, it's going to allow you to, let's see what that's about. Okay, great. Okay, so Monica, thank you for the question, and we will definitely answer that. I don't know if you all can see the chat there or not. I'm going to assume that you can't. But when you are keeping track of these things, the money going in and out, it's not just going to ease the stress around tax season. It'll ease the stress all year because you'll know you're on track for tax season, so it doesn't live out there in your brain as some terrifying thing out in the distance, right? And it's also part of empowering you to understand the flows of your own business, right? I mean, I've worked with clients who were not tracking their income and expenses as sole proprietors. And then once they did, they were like, oh my God, that thing I'm driving, you know, 4 or 5 hours round trip to go give that one massage, and it's costing me $60 to drive there and park, and I'm getting 100. Oh my God, I'm making $40 for 5 hours. I'm not sure if that's worth it for me, right? Once they started to do some of this analysis and keep these records, it really will empower you in all different sorts of ways. Because the goal is not just for you to be able to, you want to fulfill your purpose, you want to earn the money you want to earn, you want to do it efficiently, right? Why not have as much free time as you can, whether it's to do more business or do other things you love, right? So this process will empower you in multiple areas of your life and business to be able to keep records.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's pristine advice. Did you want to answer that question? Do you know?
Sure, yeah,
okay.
I do. Yeah, we had a question come in. If you're a sole proprietorship, can you use the free TurboTax? Unfortunately, no. The free version of TurboTax is very, very simple. You know, Intuit that runs TurboTax is unfortunately a business as well. And they will, you know, they have this loss leader free version. No, it's not. They will quickly upsell you to the one that costs $60. So, you know, very sorry, but yeah, the free version of TurboTax is just for people who are literally getting like one W-2 in the mail. So sorry about that.
Yeah, there is another service as well. I don't know if you can do Schedule C with it, but the IRS has a partnership. It's called Volunteer Income Tax Assistance is the program that I volunteered with, and they do, I'll see if I can find and paste the actual link, but it's for people who make something like under $60,000 a year. And again, I don't know that it counts Schedule C, but that's another place you can also go for free tax prep. And they make that available through one of the other big, I don't think it's through TurboTax, but it's through one of the big providers. Yeah. Okay. Looks like, do we have another chat? Okay. Yes. Great. And thank you for that question. Ooh, is that the right next slide? Thanks for the question, Monica. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so these are the basic things, who, what, when, where, how. So, you know, if you just keep a record of, you know, when, you know, some money came in or went out, how much, you know, make it positive for money coming in, negative for money going out. Keep a record of who did you pay or who did you receive the money from. if you're getting to the point where you're ready to use QuickBooks or some other, basic accounting system, or use a bookkeeper, you need to put clients into your system or vendors that you're paying. Keep a note also of what the money was for. Was it revenue earned, or was it money that you spent? And if you keep track of what you spend on, then you can categorize it and deduct it.
And there's different kinds of deductions potentially, so not to get into all of that, but different schedules and all that. So yeah, knowing what the money was for is going to really help out you and or your tax preparer in doing the right things and saving you the most tax money possible.
Absolutely. Yeah, if you just keep these simple records, if you're getting to the point where you need to hire an accountant, they will be so happy. They will love you because they can really work with us.
They really will.
And then keep a note about why. If there's some special circumstance, was it a refund of money earned? Was it part of a package? As a client, did they buy a package for 5 sessions? Just keep simple notes like that. You'll be happy later if you did.
Yes.
And the last thing, you will be a complete rock star if you use a spreadsheet. It's a lot of us have fears of spreadsheets. They're weird, but if you kind of delve in, try it out if you haven't already. There are many options now. Google Sheets, your Mac also has Numbers app. It's just simple column format, but it makes life so much easier for you and your accountant if you use one. You can sort, you can add numbers. It really makes all the difference. So if you can put all these items into a simple, column format spreadsheet, that's really that's half the battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
more than half.
What I did for 2018, which was the first year that I was earning revenue through my business through HK Coaching, the first part of the year, I had a Google Sheet, just like you said. If people are interested in that, I can actually send you the kind of blank version of it, and you can see the columns, and they're pretty similar to what Elizabeth recommends here. Maybe I call it like notes instead of why, or more, I forget, more info, whatever I named that column. But that's what I did for the first half of the year. And then when I got all set up with my own business bank accounts and business credit cards, then I also went ahead and got QuickBooks, and I connected everything there. And yeah, it definitely made my accountant a happier customer. There wasn't, any need to go rifling through shoe boxes of receipts. I mean, the truth is he wouldn't have minded because he gets $400 an hour. But did I want to pay him $400 an hour to rifle through a shoebox of receipts and do data entry? Or do I want to keep my costs down by doing it myself, right? And like I said, it has all those other benefits of keeping your stress levels down and empowering you to understand the flows of money in and out of your business in a way that can help elevate that. So cool. Anything else you wanted to say in here?
I think that pretty much covers it. And thank you for mentioning, the knowledge piece. If you do see where your expenditures are going, and it applies to your personal as well as your business, then you can make more informed decisions about, what you want to spend on. Is that client really worth driving so many hours for? And there are a lot of sort of business philosophy books out there, like the 4-Hour Work Week, that talk about maximizing your efficiency and your time.
Absolutely. I mean, why not, right? There's people out there doing it. Why not you? Why not you sitting there watching right now live or on the replay? Of course, why not be as efficient as possible? That gives you more time to take care of yourself, more time to be with your friends and family, more time to build your business, more time to do your advocacy work, whatever that may be, right? And something that's really powerful here, and why I love to do this stuff, and I say making taxes mindful. When I was telling people, they're like, what? I never heard those words together, right? It's because, as you were saying before, Elizabeth, the fear, like when you were talking about those audits, the fear is such a huge thing, and that taxes people, pun not intended, or maybe intended. It really taxes people, right? Emotionally. It takes a lot out of us. And if you've ever had a big thing looming in your life and you've dealt with it, and you know how light you feel, and all of a sudden you're getting things done and new things are happening and showing up in your life. That's what, if you can demystify this for yourself, that is actually what's available to you, right? Is more freedom and more power and more ease and more free time, right? And actually, hopefully more money. If you're managing your business and your taxes correctly, there's an opportunity to save yourself a significant chunk of change. So that's really the purpose here. I'm gonna stop the screen share for now. And so we will, okay, so if you have any questions, feel free to share them in the chat, and we'll just give you a few moments. We have about 10 minutes left in the scheduled time. So we'll maybe do about 7 or 8 minutes for the Q&A, and then there's a special offer that I'm going to share with you at the end for me, and then also our contact information.
And if there are any specific tax topics or financial topics that you'd like to learn about, please send us some suggestions for future webinars.
True. Yeah. And actually, I mean, I've been thinking about whether we might want to do this in person again before April 15th. You know, there's a lot of spaces around here with a lot of people who are sole proprietors or LLCs who could benefit from something like this.
Mm-hmm. You can also file an extension. A lot of people don't know about this. If you're getting down to the wire, you can't postpone. If you owe taxes, you have to pay by April 15th. But if you're getting stressed out about the actual tax return, you can file an extension. So
that's true. That is out there as well. So one thing that I'm curious about, one question I think a lot of people have is, okay, so they got this information, maybe they're feeling nervous and excited. What would be the place to start, right? Or in making a plan of action, like where do we begin, right? If you're the sole proprietor or the one partner in the LLC out there watching, what's the first step right now? We've got 18 days till April 15th.
Okay, the place I would start, bank statements. So if you have, let's say you have no records whatsoever, get all your bank statements for 2018 and just take a look. And some exposure therapy. If you look at where the money went out, how the money's coming in, start trying to get things into a spreadsheet, and just get started. Start with the money coming in. See like, oh, wow, how much I earned. Get some awareness and just kind of dive in, even if it means just spending 15 minutes to start. I would start small, and don't try to conquer it all at once.
Yep.
Spend 15 minutes today, 15 minutes tomorrow. Once you get into it, it's not that bad.
Absolutely. I think that's terrific advice. And, you'll just want to kind of go, as the saying goes, like one bite at a time, right? You may even want to kind of idea dump. This is something I do a lot with clients, is like, what are all the different things that you might want to tackle? And when you write them down, the list may not be short, but it's also not infinite. You will see that list is finite, right? And there are going to be uncertainties if this is the first time you're doing this, especially, but the only way to find and conquer them is to start, right? And get on that path. One thing you might consider is, or I would recommend, is finding somebody to, support you in this. Maybe it's a friend, maybe they are or are not a business owner in a similar financial tax situation too, like having to do the same filing, but just somebody who can kind of be there as emotional support for you. And if they also have to file as a sole proprietorship or LLC or whatever, perfect, because maybe you two can support each other kind of tactically throughout that process. But I find that if I'm on my own, sometimes it can be harder to find the motivation. And if I have a other person with me, then we can support each other, and it kind of keeps the vibe and energy up. Of course, I'm an extrovert. If you're an introvert, you may have a different situation. But again, maybe just having someone you trust in your presence works. But basically, at a bird's eye level, it's just like, again, the same ways that you're looking at the rest of your life to be thoughtful and mindful, you can bring those very same techniques and tactics to your finances and to your taxes. And they have the very same kind of empowering results if and when you do bring them. Things like digging into your psyche, understanding the stories you've made up about yourself vis-a-vis that topic, like taxes or finances, starting to gain knowledge, getting support from people around you, right? Taking one step at a time, but keep putting one foot in front of the other. All those same kind of things in the world of self-growth and self-help and transformation and all that, and heal, like that applies here just the same, right? Really powerful stuff. And then a question about the Schedule C that comes up for people. You know, I mean, maybe however deep you want to go, but they'll be like, wait, they didn't talk about this thing. What's this? So maybe a little bit of an overview or something might be helpful.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. If you're filing as a sole, or if you run your business as a sole proprietorship, then your tax return will include this extra form, the Schedule C. So basically, a Schedule C is like a miniature business tax return. So I was going to show a picture of it. I wasn't sure I should do that to people. But there's a line for your income, and the deductions against the income, like cost of, cost of goods or cost of what you're selling. And then there's a list of expenses. So if you've filed as an entrepreneur before, you've probably seen this. TurboTax will automatically generate it. Tax software like that will ask you questions about your business, like, what did you earn, and what were the different types of expenses that you had, and then it'll just kind of pop them into this form.
Yeah, it's a great overview. But we just, if and when you see that form, or if TurboTax like, oh, you need to get the Schedule C version, that's an extra $50, right? So you understand that, you may not like that it's $50 extra from TurboTax, but you'll understand that they're not just making up some form to get you to fill out to pay extra money. That's actually the standard form for a sole proprietorship for anybody with kind of side hustle income or running their business as a sole proprietorship.
Also, if you find that your expenses are more than what you earned, so let's say, you're still getting your education, or you're still building your business, you're spending a lot on marketing or rent or whatever. If your losses outweigh your income, that will actually count towards other types of income that you have. And if you're just running at a total loss, that can actually carry forward to future years. So do keep track of every expense that you incur, because you will get credit for that, basically.
Yeah, you can use it to offset, like you said, other income now or potentially in the future. Yeah, absolutely. And again, why not, right? Take advantage of the opportunities there. Okay, great. So I'll just pop us back to the slideshow for a moment just to finish this up. And here's just our contact information that we wanted to share with you. So this is if you would like to get in touch, if you want to just...
Yeah, so my website is lifebalancing.com. I do tend to specialize in more complicated, I don't prepare tax returns. I do counseling and advising for complicated situations. So, but you're welcome to reach out through my website.
Yeah, absolutely. And then there's my name and website and my email address. If you have any questions, feel free to contact Elizabeth or myself, or both of us, frankly. And for people who have tuned in here, then, so basically that link, bit.ly/financial harmony consultation. I want to make an offer to you who are watching. You get a free 60-minute consultation with me to see how we can bring more mindfulness and power to your finances in whatever ways really matter to you, right? Deal with some of this stuff we bring to the table, unpack that, and then get you empowered, create a new context that really works for you. And if you go ahead and book a consultation with me today, then if you do choose to work with me moving forward, then I will give people who came to this presentation $100 off of their first month of working with me. And just when you schedule that consultation, either by email or when we talk or message, just let me know, hey, I saw that offer on the Making Taxes Mindful workshop, and I'll make sure to honor that discount of $100 off your first month of working with me. So again, if you are interested in that, you just go to bit.ly/financial harmony consultation, all lowercase. Look forward to speaking with you all. And again, as Elizabeth said, other topics or things that you'd love to see in webinars like this, let us know. We want to bring things that are of value to you. And thank you all so much for joining, whether you're on Zoom, Facebook Live, or even if you watch the recording.
Thanks a lot, everybody. Yeah.
Okay. Have a wonderful afternoon. Look, we're right at 12. Perfect. And everybody have a great rest of your day and week.